For most of NBA history, there's been a clear picture of what greatness looked like. Size, power, athleticism. Essentially, if you wanted to control the game, you controlled the paint. Players such as Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon built their entire careers overpowering defenders inside the paint near the basket. Even perimeter players such as Michael Jordan, Kobe Bean Bryant dominated from the mid-range, primarily through their isolation play. The three-point line, it existed, but it was never the centerpiece of the game. In the early 2000s, teams averaged roughly 13 to 15 three-point attempts per game. It was a skill set that was more of a supporting craft instead of the central part of an offense. And then there was a player that came on the scene that didn't really fit the prototype, Steph Curry. He wasn't the tallest player on the floor. He wasn't the strongest. Shoot, he wasn't even the most athletic or the quickest. By NBA standards, he was not a prototype. He was undersized. However, he possessed something that would change the NBA game forever: range. Stephen Curry didn't just shoot three-pointers, he shot them from a distance that was astronomical. He forced defenders to step out and guard him nearly 30 feet away from the basketball hoop. What's crazy is back in the 2015-16 season, he made 402 three-point shots, which shattered the previous NBA record, which was 286. On top of that, he shot 45% from beyond the arc. Before Stephen Curry's rise, a team would average about 23 point attempts per game. Today, that number is about 35 to 40 three-point attempts per game. In just over one decade, teams nearly doubled their three-point attempts per game. Stephen didn't invent the three-pointer, but he proved that it could be a foundational element to the game. So here's the deal. Instead of mastering the game by his physical presence and athleticism, he took a different approach, and he dominated by mastering a skill in which the entire NBA had to adapt. The system at large had to change. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, you had the mid-range game. From the 2010s to now, you have the three-point game. The same concept of the NBA style of play evolving over time is not exclusive to sports, but in fact it happens in our world of work as we know it. For decades, career success was pretty much a predictable model. You get a degree, you join a company, you climb the corporate ladder, you stay loyal. And just like the NBA and basketball changes over time, our workforce changes over time. Technology reshapes industries. Automation changes job functions. Shoot, you know, as we speak, artificial intelligence has shaped nearly 30 to 40% of our current job functions and industries. When systems change, the people who thrive are not those who have mastered a skill from the previous era. Quite the opposite. The folks that thrive and are most successful are the ones that master a skill set for the new era. Stephen Curry might be one of the clearest examples when you think about the sport of basketball. However, his career is not just about basketball. It's really an example of a case study when a high leverage skill changes the system forever. And that right there is the lesson that I want to unbox. How can we maximize or develop high leverage skills for our own career success? Let's dive in.
Boxing my pain away, boxing my dreams, boxing my hopes away, boxing my shame. Boxes on boxes, I'm stacking my grief, boxing these haters that slander my name.
So when Steph Curry entered the NBA, he didn't really look like a dominant superstar. Being 6'2", weighing about 185 pounds, you know, he's undersized when it comes to NBA standards. He wasn't overpowering his defenders, and he was really one of the few players coming out of his draft class that demonstrated high-level range when it came to three-point shooting ability. So because of Steph Curry's three-point range and his ability to redefine how the three-point shot is being thrown up, the game had to adapt. The Golden State Warriors created a brand new offensive system that was really built around spacing the floor and continual ball movement. Players such as Klay Thompson really helped stretch defenders with his elite shooting alongside Steph Curry. Folks like Draymond Green acted as a playmaking hub that kept the offense flowing. It's crazy because between 2015 and 2019, the Golden State Warriors built a dynasty. They won 3 NBA championships. And then that's when the copycat started to happen. Other teams started to adopt this same offensive strategy. You get teams such as the Houston Rockets with James Harden trying to mimic the same style of play. In today's era, it's common to see every team have that same space and play style that the Golden State Warriors were the archetypes for. Even more, I want to sort of highlight two models of greatness. So you got LeBron James and Steph Curry. They represent two very different styles of play, two very different models of greatness. The lesson that we can learn is that there's not one way to do things in our worlds of work or throughout the stories of our career. And this is where the parallel from the NBA to the workforce kind of comes in. You know, this is not just the story of basketball. You know, when I think about our workforce, you know, there's eras, there's trends and patterns and evolution. We've kind of been taught to go and get a degree, join a company, you know, work your way up, start from the ground roots of serving customers directly, then maybe start to lead a small team and then become an executive director and so on and so forth. When you think back in the early 1990s, the average American worker would stay with their job for 10 to 15 years. That's a long time. And even before then, where perhaps some of our parents or grandparents, they would literally work at an organization for 30, 40, 50 years throughout the entire tenure of their career. And so that was the mindset. But now when you think over the last 30 years, our workforce has changed. Technology has drastically changed industries and communities for that matter. We have globalization, which means that companies are offshoring their talent in order to make their products and services at a cheaper premium. That impacts our jobs and the way that we do it. We also have legislation. So when laws are passed, sometimes it positively or negatively affects how a product or service is consumed and produced in a said place. And then we have natural resources, which drastically changes how a company could make a product or service. So if I'm a major technology company and I need a certain mineral in order to make a smartphone or device or whatever product it is, that's going to impact the amount of jobs, the types of jobs that are in a certain geographic location. And just mind you, that's just a few examples, just thinking about technology, globalization, legislation, and natural resources impacting economies, job functions, and industries at large. And back in the early 2000s, we had large retail chains that pretty much dominated the retail space. So companies such as Sears, Toys R Us, JCPenney, or really any anchor store that you can find at your mall near where you live is a great example of a large retail chain. So retail jobs were stable. They had a level of predictability when it came to employment and job opportunities for workers. And then what happened all of a sudden was e-commerce scaled. So companies such as Amazon, who were just upstarts in the early 2000s, started to reshape how we as consumers shop for products. Because of our consumer behavior changing, that changes jobs being available and the types of jobs being available. You no longer have a lot of in-person sales associate jobs because of how we consume and buy products via e-commerce. Another way how workforce has changed and just highlighting the different eras is media and digital translation. So when you think about the early 1990s, newspapers were a primary product that folks consumed. Those local newspapers or magazines that we used to consume, they generated a lot of revenue. Advertisers would want to purchase space to sell their products or market their products inside of those newspapers and magazines. So when you think about how impactful physical media was in the year 2000, newspapers generated $65 billion in advertising revenue. In contrast to where we are now, as of 2022, that number has fallen to about $10 billion in advertising revenue for physical media, such as newspapers and magazines. Digital platforms have replaced them. Companies such as Google, Meta has really absorbed a lot of the advertising economy. So journalism as a profession didn't necessarily disappear. However, the overall system has changed. So new roles emerge. You have data journalists, you have podcast producers, you have independent content creators. So the work itself of journalism and perhaps creating media or distributing media hasn't changed, but the medium of media has changed, which drastically changed job functions. And here's the last example is artificial intelligence. As of 2025, there's been about 50,000 layoffs that have been associated with AI. And when you look overall at our workforce with 1.2 million layoffs happening this year, only about 4.5% of jobs have been cut associated with AI. So it's not a lot when you think about the grand scheme, but it is important to note that organizations are shifting, Job functions are shifting because of AI. It's been said that about 30 to 40% of the nature and scope of our work has been impacted by AI in some shape or fashion. So when you think about a marketing team using automation to generate and analyze content, that's just one example of how AI is shifting a job function. The point that I'm making with these examples is the pattern is clear, systems evolve. Just like the NBA's game has changed over the last 30 years, our workforce will continue to change and evolve. So here's the key thing that I want to unbox. When you think about the NBA and Steph Curry, he mastered a skill set, and then the NBA adapted to that skill set. Defenses, they play individuals further off of the three-point line, and that's all because a man mastered the skill set of range. And the same could be said for all of us as working professionals, creatives, entrepreneurs that have to adapt and change. In some shape or fashion, technology is going to force adaptation and evolution in the world of work that we operate in. So here's the question that I have for you, whether you're a creative, a professional, entrepreneur, whatever it is, what skill set becomes your three-point shot? Be blessed.
Boxing my pain away, boxing my dreams, boxing my hopes away, boxing my shame. Boxes on boxes, I'm stacking my grief, boxing these haters that slander my name.